くりレ夢ムです。
ゆっくりマリサだぜ。
Hi, Raimo. Hi, Marissa. Hey guys. The 500 million year paradox.
ゆっくりしていってね。
Section 1. What if life on Earth didn't start where we thought it did? What if the first complex creatures, the ones that eventually became us, didn't slowly crawl out of some quiet prehistoric swamp over billions of years, but instead appeared almost overnight? That's not a metaphor. Scientists have a name for it. They call it the Cambrian explosion. And for over 150 years, it has been one of the most stubborn, most baffling mysteries in all of science. Here's the strange part. For the first 4 billion years of Earth's history, 4 billion years, life was basically just slime. Bacteria, microbes, single-celled organisms floating around in the ocean, doing almost nothing. And then, in a geological blink of an eye, roughly 500 million years ago, everything changed. Eyes appeared, legs, shells, brains, complex nervous systems, predators and prey. The entire basic blueprint of animal life as we know it today. All of it showed up in the fossil record in what amounts to about 20 million years, which, in geological time, is basically tomorrow morning. How does that happen? Why then? He called it, and I'm paraphrasing here, the most serious objection that could be raised against his theory. Because if evolution was gradual, there should be a long chain of fossils leading up to complex life. Simple creatures slowly getting more complex. More legs, more eyes, better brains. Millions of years of small changes, all recorded in the rock. But when scientists looked at the Cambrian layer, that distinctive band of rock from roughly 538 million years ago, they didn't find a slow build-up. They found an explosion. Dozens of completely new body plans. Creatures with eyes that had never existed before. Animals with hard shells. Segmented bodies. Internal organs. Things that looked like shrimp, like worms, like early fish, all appearing at once, with almost nothing showing up in the layers below. Darwin hoped future fossil discoveries would fill in the gaps. He's been dead for 143 years. The gaps are still there. Section 3 now. Before we go any further, let's make sure we understand what the evidence actually shows. Because this mystery is a lot stranger than most people realize. Here are the facts. Fact 1. Prior to the Cambrian period, Earth had life. That part isn't controversial. We have fossils going back 3.5 billion years. But for almost all of that time, life was microscopic. Bacteria, algae, thin, flat, soft-bodied organisms called the Ediacaran fauna that appeared about 635 million years ago. And even those strange, almost alien-looking creatures mostly vanished before the Cambrian begins. Like they just got erased. Fact 2. The Cambrian explosion produced almost every major animal body plan that exists on Earth today. Arthropods, the group that includes insects, spiders, and crustaceans. Mollusks, echinoderms, chordates, that's the group we belong to. All of them appear within a geologically tiny window of time. Fact 3. And this is the one that really gets scientists talking. The Cambrian explosion appears to have happened faster than Darwin's gradual model can easily explain. In 1909, a paleontologist named Charles Walcott made a discovery in the Canadian Rockies that shook the scientific world. He found a site in British Columbia called the Burgess Shale, and inside it, preserved in extraordinary detail, soft tissue and all, were thousands of Cambrian creatures. Some of them looked familiar. Others looked like nothing that has ever existed before or since. One of them, called Anomalocaris, was the apex predator of its day, a bizarre swimming creature with circular, grasping claws and compound eyes. It could grow up to 3 feet long. In a world where most animals were barely an inch, that was a monster. But here's what really matters. The Burgess Shale didn't solve the mystery. If anything, it deepened it. Because even in that exquisitely preserved snapshot of early animal life, the animals were already complex, already specialized, already adapted. The before was still missing. Then, in the 1980s and 90s, scientists found more Cambrian fossil sites in China, Greenland, and Australia, each one more detailed than the last, each one with the same result: complexity. Suddenly, with no obvious ancestral trail. By this point, scientists weren't just puzzled. Some of them were starting to ask a very uncomfortable question. Is there something fundamentally wrong with how we understand evolution? Section 4. This is where the investigation gets really interesting. Because over the past 150 years, researchers have come up with a lot of theories to explain the Cambrian explosion. Some of them are brilliant. Some of them are wild. And a couple of them are still actively debated today. Let's walk through the big ones. Theory 1. We just haven't found the fossils yet. This is still the position of many mainstream scientists, and honestly, it's a reasonable starting point. The argument is simple. Soft-bodied creatures don't fossilize well. Most of them rot away before they can be preserved. So the slow, gradual buildup that Darwin predicted might have happened. We just don't have the physical evidence yet, because those early creatures left almost nothing behind. It's plausible, and there is some supporting evidence. Scientists have found microfossils, tiny, microscopic remains, that hint at increasing complexity in the millions of years before the Cambrian. Some researchers point to structures called small shelly fossils, appearing just before the explosion. But here's the problem. Even with every new fossil discovery in the past century, the gap at the bottom of the Cambrian hasn't closed the way this theory predicts it should. At some point, we haven't found it yet, stops being a satisfying answer. Theory 2. A trigger event changed everything. This theory says the Cambrian explosion wasn't random. Something happened that caused it. A specific event in Earth's environment that suddenly made complex life possible or necessary. What's the leading candidate? Oxygen. For most of Earth's early history, the atmosphere had very little free oxygen, and complex, active animal life requires a lot of it. But around 800 to 600 million years ago, oxygen levels in Earth's oceans and atmosphere started climbing, possibly because of a massive boom in photosynthetic bacteria producing oxygen as a byproduct. By the time the Cambrian rolled around, there was finally enough oxygen to power complex metabolisms, big muscles, active predators, eyes that could actually process light. This theory has a lot going for it. The timing works reasonably well. The chemistry makes sense, and it explains why life stayed simple for so long. It couldn't afford to be anything else. But here's where it gets strange. If rising oxygen was the trigger, why didn't life become complex gradually as oxygen rose? Why did it still seem to happen all at once? Theory 3. The evolution of eyes changed everything. This one is genuinely fascinating. Counterattacks. An evolutionary arms race ignited and never stopped. It's a compelling idea, and the fossil record does show that eyes appear very early in the Cambrian record, sometimes among the very first complex features to show up. But critics point out that this theory doesn't fully explain the origin of that first eye, or why so many completely unrelated body plans appeared at the same time. Theory 4. Snowball Earth. Here's where it gets dramatic. Between roughly 720 and 635 million years ago, Earth may have frozen almost completely, pole to pole, ocean to ocean, a solid ball of ice. Scientists call this Snowball Earth. It's controversial, but the geological evidence for at least some version of it is fairly strong. The theory goes like this. When Snowball Earth ended and the ice thawed, it created conditions unlike anything life had experienced before. Nutrients flooded the oceans from melting glaciers. New habitats opened up. Life had been bottlenecked for millions of years, and when the pressure released, evolution exploded. What makes this theory interesting is that it offers a mechanism for why life might have been suddenly pressured into new directions. Mass extinction followed by rapid diversification is actually a pattern we see again and again in Earth's history. But there's still that timeline problem. Snowball Earth ended roughly 100 million years before the Cambrian explosion. That's a long fuse for a very sudden bang. Theory 5. The panspermia hypothesis. Okay, now we get to the controversial one. A small but notable group of scientists, including Nobel Prize winners, have suggested something much more radical, that the seeds of complex life didn't originate on Earth at all, that they arrived from space, carried on comets or asteroids, a concept called panspermia. In 2018, a paper published by a group of researchers, including some with serious academic credentials, suggested that the Cambrian explosion could be explained if viruses or even genetic material arrived from space and inserted new biological complexity into existing Earth life. The scientific community received this idea with significant skepticism. But here's the thing about panspermia. It doesn't actually solve the mystery. Even if life did arrive from somewhere else, it would still have to evolve somewhere. It just pushes the question back to another planet. And yet, the fact that serious scientists are still reaching for that explanation tells you something about how genuinely unsettled this problem remains. Section 5. So where does all this leave us? Let's be honest with each other. There's no single, clean answer. If there were, this wouldn't be a mystery worth making a documentary about. But if you look at the evidence and weigh the theories, a picture does start to emerge. The most scientifically supported view today is probably a combination of factors, not one single cause, but several triggers that overlapped at just the right moment. Rising oxygen gave life the fuel it needed. The end of Snowball Earth reshuffled the global ecosystem. The first predator-prey relationships, possibly kicked off by early eyes, created an arms race that drove rapid diversification. And crucially, the genetic machinery for complexity may have been quietly building for hundreds of millions of years before it suddenly found the right conditions to express itself. Some researchers have found that many of the key genes responsible for building complex animal bodies already existed in simpler organisms long before the Cambrian. The tools were there. Life just needed the right moment to use them. Think of it like a city. The Cambrian didn't build civilization from nothing. The materials, the energy, the social structures, they were all slowly accumulating. And then one day, the conditions aligned. And in what looked like an instant, the city appeared. That framing doesn't fully explain the speed. It doesn't account for every missing ancestor. It doesn't solve the deepest part of the mystery. But it's the best map we have to a place we've never been able to visit. Here's why this actually matters. Understanding the Cambrian explosion isn't just an academic exercise. It goes to the heart of one of the biggest questions in science. How rare is complex life? If the Cambrian explosion happened because of a unique combination of factors that took 4 billion years to align, then complex animal life might be vanishingly rare in the universe. Earth might have been the lucky one. Here's something that stays with me every time I go back to this case. Darwin spent the last decades of his life quietly worried about the Cambrian explosion. He knew what it meant for his theory. He hoped it would be solved. And in many ways, in the 140 years since his death, science has made enormous progress. We've found the Burgess Shale. We've found the Chengjiang fossils in China. We've mapped the genomes of living creatures and traced their evolutionary heritage. And yet, the question Darwin first asked in 1859 still doesn't have a complete answer. We still don't fully know what triggered it. We still don't have a clear ancestral trail for many of the body plans that appeared. We still can't fully explain the speed. What we do know is that sometime around 538 million years ago, in the shallow waters of an ancient ocean on a young planet, something happened. Something that set in motion every complex creature that has ever lived on Earth. Every insect, every fish, every dinosaur, every human being walking the planet today. Whatever it was, it happened fast, and it left almost no warning. So here's the question I'll leave you with. The Cambrian explosion gave rise to complex life. It happened once, as far as we know. What if it happens again? What if, somewhere out in the 400 billion star systems of the Milky Way, another world is right now going through its own version of that moment, its own 500 million year paradox, and something with eyes is looking up at the sky for the very first time? We may never know, or we might. That's the thing about unsolved mysteries. They don't stay unsolved forever. The Cambrian explosion remains one of the greatest unsolved questions in evolutionary biology. What do you think caused it? Let us know in the comments. Asterisk, like and subscribe for more mysteries hiding inside history.